It's weird that it's and Merrick, right? Yami, Merrick has an alter ego too, and that's Yami Merrick. But like, I think it's just those. I guess it's not every.
So they all get taller, or is it just Yugi?
It is just Yugi. I think Yugi's the only one who gets taller. I feel like there's a bit in this book where, like, when Simon transforms, they talk about how his hair is gelled up, which is very funny. He's just Chinese Yugimoto. Welcome to Mortified, the Friendship Quest, a podcast where two long-distance friends bounce media recommendations, all in hopes the other will like it. I'm Aaron.
And I'm Olga of Kiev, possessing Leyla and giving her flame powers because she met me in an MMO, like World of Warcraft.
And this week, we talk about Shirin J. Shao's middle grade debut with Zachary, Ying, and the Dragon Emperor. Before we resolve our dad issues via Yu-Gi-Oh!, remember you can help us on Mortified the Legitimacy Quest by subscribing to us on YouTube, iTunes, or Spotify, signing up for a monthly newsletter through the link in our show notes, or following us on Twitter and Tumblr at MortifiedPod. Layla.
Aaron?
You read a lot of middle grade books?
Gosh, I used to. I think this might be the last one.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. And I think it's important for us to contextualize the fact that this is a middle grade book. I can only speak for myself, but like, I think a lot of it didn't land with me because it is a middle grade book. And I think we're going to do a thing that we try to do a lot here on Mortified is talk about why things did and didn't work. To be clear, I don't think that, at least from my ride, I was like, okay, I can see where Shao is like, okay, I have to make this for a younger audience, but you can also absolutely see the flashes of what they're like trying to get at with like stuff like Iron Widow. I mean, we're going to inevitably be comparing this to Iron Widow. But like, yeah, I think, every time we talk about a book in like a critical context, I just want to be very clear. We're not dissing the book. We're going to talk about why it didn't work for us. And I think a lot of that is just because this is not a book aimed for adults.
No, we are about 18 years over the fucking target audience for this, so...
Right. But I still think there's a lot to enjoy about what Shao is doing here. I have a bit of a plot summary, but because when I was writing it, I had a brain episode of sorts, so it's not great. But Leyla, do you wanna help me walk through it?
Yeah, I can fucking tackle this one.
Okay.
Yeah, we can go through it. So, Zachary Ying is a 12-year-old first-generation American immigrant. His family fled China because his father spoke up against the regime there, and his mother is a Chinese Muslim, and now they live in the States, in Maine. A very white state. And poor Zachary is a 12-year-old just trying his goddamn best to fit in with his peers at school. And he is on the Mythrealm team at school because this school has fucking esports. And Mythrealm is very much, I think, as Aaron kind of briefly mentioned in the intro, is a blend between like WoW and Yu-Gi-Oh! It is a card-based MMO of sorts, and it gets pretty competitive.
I think it's also a little bit like Pokemon Go. Like, I feel like there's an AR like location based element too.
There is, because a key prop in this story is the AR headset that Zachary wears.
Okay. Gotcha.
So Zachary in the hallway of a school meets Simon, the only other Chinese kid he'd seen at school. And Simon, also a very good Mythrealm player who adds Zachary to his friends list. And when Zachary looks at his profile, realizes he has a very, very, very rare creature. And this sparks his friends to want him to go and talk to Simon and quote-unquote borrow this creature for their tournament. A very important thing to note here is that Zach thinks the blonde asshole that he's friends with is very cute. So we have a tiny queer Yu-Gi-Oh player on our hand, and I love that.
Yeah,
for him.
it's very funny that he has a crush on the Yu-Gi-Oh team captain. Like I love the future where you can be like, oh, the team captain of the Yu-Gi-Oh team, what a dreamboat.
I don't even want to fucking talk about it because walking around the mall nowadays and seeing anime fucking merch in storefronts, the emotional whiplash I get. I walked into Hot Topic with my friend and I saw a Helsing shirt that I definitely owned in 2006 just like being reprinted. I was like, are you... I almost bought it too. Anyway, so...
To be fair, when I was in the age range to go to the mall, like that Hot Topic is where I bought all my anime shit.
Oh, same, yeah. I had a Helsing shirt, I had a Full Metal Alchemist shirt. Hot Topic will be the shit. Anyway.
Right. Right.
So, for some reason, around this creature, there's a lot of, like, odd tension. Zachary starts to notice that his friends are, like, a little too intense about this whole thing, and so they go quite literally to basically fight Simon under the flagpole, right? They corner him on the track, and Zachary starts to notice that his friend is getting way too aggressive about this shit, and it evolves into a physical altercation. And then that physical altercation escalates once fucking more when Zach starts hearing a weird voice coming out of his fucking headset, or in his head, I think at that point. A weird fucking voice in his head, and suddenly realizes that he can bring down a goddamn rainstorm. Here's where we get introduced to the fact that something is trying to possess our good boy Zachary Ying. And so he somehow, thank God, repels the possession, and he takes his headset and he fucking runs home, having saved Simon from getting choked out. And at home, he goes to eat dinner with his mom, who's very cool, right? His mom used to be a scientist. Actually, this is the part where I was like, ooh, baby boy, I get you. His mom used to be a scientist, and now she works at Target and at the university, which... I don't know if y'all know this, but be nice to immigrants because a lot of them are smarter than you. You know, my mom was a full-fledged doctor back in Russia, and she's not that anymore because of stupid things. So, yeah, so he's having dinner with his mom, and then the landlords come down and out of nowhere threaten to evict them. And Zachary starts to hear a voice coming out of his headset. And when he puts on his headset, that voice tells him to use the soup to fight off his landlords, but it's too fucking late. They got his mom's soul in a fantasy pagoda.
I was gonna say, like, so Yu-Gi-Oh, you know, Xiao is, like, very open about, like, what their influences are. Like, you know, famously, like, photoshopped the Iron Widow cover to have a dual disc. Like, so, like, the fact that they're like, okay, you know what? You know the premise for the Yu-Gi-Oh anime where his grandpa's soul gets sent to the Shadow Realm? We're just gonna do that to mom here. It's like almost exactly the same thing. The only way it could have been a more Yu-Gi-Oh is if it was like a VHS. If this was delivered via VHS, but this is the future, so you can't do that.
No, you gotta do it. They do reference hashtags a couple of times in this book, which I thought was very fun. But yeah, it's so mom's gone now. And once Zachary, Simon shows up again. Simon, the other Chinese boy that Zachary met at school. And Simon blows my poor little boy's gourd wide open by being like, hey, so your headset now has the soul of the first emperor of China, which is who I was trying to tell you about in the hallway before you so rudely fucking walked away from me. Qin Shi Wang. He's in your headset now. And you have water powers. Also, we have to go seal a ghost hole in China, so get on a plane. We're going to Shanghai. And that is the breakneck pace at which this book goes. This was all in the first 60 pages, I think.
Right. I thought, honestly, that is the slowest part of the book.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Because, like, from there, it just goes at a fucking clip. It is incredibly fast-paced. And again, I think this is because they're writing for a middle-grade audience. They, you know, doesn't really need the character development. Is really kind of here maybe for the bigger action scenes, of which there are a lot. But yeah, I think maybe my biggest criticism of this book, or not even criticism, is that, like, I wish it had been slowed down. But like it's not what this book is going for. It is going for an incredibly quick pace.
It's going for keeping a 12-year-old's attention in the TikTok economy.
Right. Yes. That's so true.
So Simon does tell, so the boys fly first class to Shanghai. And Simon wants Zachary to watch a documentary, but he also, to strengthen his like spirit bond with this emperor who lives in his headset now. Mm-hmm. Simon is also possessed by an emperor, by Tang Taizong, or Taishang, sorry.
But also Tang Taishang, we've actually seen before as Li Shiming from Iron Widow, right? It's based off the same guy. He goes by Tang Taishang here, but Shiming is it was his original name. So
we're about to get another fucking Iron Widow cameo.
A cameo.
So when they land, they meet a very fashionable young lady named Melissa, who is possessed by Wu Zechen.
Notably, the person same name as the protagonist of Iron Widow.
Yeah, we love a consistent queen.
Yes. My favorite bit with Melissa, I think, is this first bit where she is like talking to Zachary, and he's like, "Oh wow, I've never felt this way about a girl before. Am I bisexual?" And then she's like, "Oh no, I just used my powers on you. That's Melissa, or not Melissa, but the Zotian's ability is to she has this charm magic, which she's been largely using to like control bodyguards and her buff bodyguard. But like, it's very funny that like, it's very funny that he's like, "Oh yeah, no, I'm still gay. It's just magic."
She does arguably also do the most violence. I want to, she's not just like the girl charmer. She gets a whip that turns into a hammer that turns into a knife. And she is always the first to use it.
Right. No, 100%.
So, in true Zira and Jay Zhao fashion.
So, of our three characters, we haven't really got a lot of them, but like, do you think any of them align with main Yu-Gi-Oh characters?
Oh, man. I kept looking for the Kaiba, and I couldn't find him.
I don't think I feel like by the end Zachary's a little bit of a Kaiba, because he is more like about power and control, and he has a relationship with Chi Wong in a way that like kind of reflects Kaiba's own willingness to be ruthless. But yeah, I don't know that anything cleanly maps onto Yu-Gi-Oh characters. I do feel like Simon is a little bit more of a Yami Yugi. Or not Yami Yugi, Yugi Moto.
Right.
I feel like he's a little bit more like the guy who is like, I'm in control of this, spirit, but like the spirit is like fundamentally kind of a good guy. Although Taishang is maybe not super chill, but like I think it's interesting. I don't know that there's a clean map there.
There's not really a clean map, and I also I like the way that magic and these kind of like legend possessions work in this world, which is to say, like in Yu-Gi-Oh, it's a pretty clean. There's an emperor in this pyramid necklace that you wear, Yugi. And if you steal the object, you steal the possession. But in this one, it's very much not only are you possessed by the spirit of the first emperor of China, but you could also be possessed by, in that one case, a woman who's never existed, right? A legend of that woman who went and her husband had died inside the Great Wall. Mm-hmm. You could also be possessed. It's weird. It's almost like they're not ghosts, and they're not really the people that they claim to be, but they're a mix of like magic and memory and legend. Yeah. And towards the end of the book, there's this, kind of a side where Zetian apparently has memories of things that could have happened, but she's not sure they're real. Right. And then she's missing some other stuff. And I was like, that's neat, because it kind of it implies that they're not ghosts. It implies that they're kind of this like cosmic soup.
Right. And like that's something that Shao like explicitly wanted to do, is like about how the Chinese pantheon of gods like is ever changing, and how some people just like start being revered as gods because like that's just how, you know, they were talked about. You know, once you get back, you know, a certain amount of distance from any like famous figure, you know, it's like, okay, they're kind of like almost godly at some point. And like the fact that there is a mutability to that, and this is a story very much about how like, you know, the gods are as strong as the people who believe in them are, which is really cool. But yeah, this is an interesting thing. One thing that is very clearly like a direct Yu-Gi-Oh archetype is Jason Shun, because like he is very clearly like the tech billionaire who you know founded Mythrealm, like the company that owns the. Yeah, he's just Pegasus, and like he's being possessed by an evil spirit that is you know, definitely like super powerful and evil. Which leads me to a question: is there a Yami Pegasus? This is something I don't remember from Yu-Gi-Oh at all.
I don't think so.
I don't think there's a Yami Pegasus, right? I think it's just Bakura and Yugi, right?
I think it's just Bakura and Yugi that get like straight up possessed. Yeah. Huh.
It's weird that it's and Merrick, right? Well, yeah. Merrick has an alter ego too, and that's Yami Merrick. But like, I think it's just those. I guess it's not every.
So they all get taller, or is it just Yugi?
It is just Yugi. I think Yugi's the only one who gets taller. I feel like there's a bit in this book where like when Simon transforms, they talk about how his hair is gelled up, which is very funny. He's just Chinese Yu-Gi-Moto, but like very, very funny. Man, Yu-Gi-Oh was good. Man. I mean, it wasn't. We watched it so many Mortifieds ago, and it takes so many episodes to really understand the nuances of. But man, Yu-Gi-Oh was good.
If we ever have a Patreon, maybe that's what we'll do. We'll push through Yu-Gi-Oh.
Yeah, no. Listen, I would love to do a Yu-Gi-Oh retrospective. That would be great.
A Yu-Gi watch.
Man. Yeah, no. Listen, I got really into Yu-Gi-Oh in 2018 for some reason. I built the whole deck and everything. It was awesome.
Shout out to my friend Ange, who sent me Yu-Gi-Oh cards for some reason in my gift parcel from a month ago. And now I just have Yu-Gi-Oh cards again.
Hell yeah. Shout out to Ange.
Shout out to Ange. And yeah. So anyway, they land in Shanghai. Melissa's there. They have a henchwoman. It's all hunky-dory. Except, oopsie, poopsie, Zachary messed up his possession. So Emperor Qin didn't actually like bond with him. So he lives in his headset now and appears to him as a digital teenage boy. To not scare him. My favorite scene with Emperor Chen, I think, is when they're standing on a boat and Emperor Chen is like making his own robes flap in the wind because he can't feel the wind, and I'm like, that's the kind of commitment to melodrama that I think I appreciate in a person. Right. In order to make Zachary's bond stronger, because he can't even manifest an itsy bitsy sword, he can't even make a spirit sword. Boo. He has to go strengthen his spiritual relationship with Emperor Chen, which requires them breaking into the Shanghai Museum and holding a measuring cup. Yes, you heard me. A measuring cup. Because Emperor Chen standardized all the measurements in China, which I thought was a cool little bit of history that you get to learn about how the Warring States era ended. Anyway, so they go, and of course they're getting attacked while they go by a deceased assassin, and you learn some fun history about the first assassination attempt of Emperor Qin. And I did like, so part of the gimmick here is that Zach gets a lot of information delivered via his headset, like he gets little tooltips from Emperor Qin, who lives in his headset, and he sees everything as like a Mythrealm UI, which is fun.
Yeah.
But so Emperor Chen is describing his own assassination attempt to Zachary via this headset, and I do like that it describes him running around a pillar, and then at the end it's written, "Do not imagine this is a scene out of Tom and Jerry." And then Emperor Chen goes on to say, "The Yellow Emperor really knows exactly who to send to piss me off." Emperor Chen said, "Pissed off," which I thought was just very charming.
Yeah, it's really good.
So they go touch the cup. It works. Right, Zachary can pull the sword now, and he stabs the spirit out of someone. It's cool. They don't die. No one really dies in this book, because it's for children's. And unlike the Fast and Furious franchise, children don't need to do murder in this fucking book.
Listen, we had a little pre-show before we started recording the episode. Yeah, y'all should watch Fast 10 before we talk about it here in a little bit.
Yeah, in a couple of weeks we're gonna give ourselves a breather and then go ahead. But anyway, yeah. So then again, the book continues at a breakneck fucking pace, right? They go from museum. They have to. Their whole thing is like, hey Zach, we gotta stop. The spirits are gonna come out during Ghost Month, and it's gonna be fucking havoc. We gotta reinforce the plug. To reinforce the plug, we need this fucking magic seal. The seal, the Dragon Emperor has the seal. We gotta go get it. So they take off on this journey to go get immortality pills from these, like, from the Celestial Court, and they go do that. And it's very dramatic because the Celestial Court is like, hey, you know who was a cunt? Emperor Chin. He's not allowed here. And this is my favorite Melissa moment. While they're trying to get to the island full of immortals to get the immortality pills so that they can't die underwater for a day, Zachary's like, I can't use my magic. I'm too weak. I'm still paralyzed from the spirit magic from the boat that was being used on me. And Melissa says, yeah, bitch, and throws him overboard. I love it. I support women's wrongs.
Listen, that's true. Like, oh yeah, Wu Zetian really is in that woman, huh?
Yeah, Wu Zetian said this little boy is useless, and she chucks him. And of course, he comes out from under the water, fully bonded with, Emperor Chen, and then he, very dramatic chase sequence, like, takes him to the island. It's great. At the island, he's in prison for a while, and it's very sad because his friends get to live, like, in luxury the whole time.
Yeah, it's really sad to be like, yeah, I've been in prison for 5 days, and y'all have just been living it up, but it's cool.
They seem shocked. They're like, wait, what happened to you?
Like, wait, you were in jail? We've just been having bonbons and shit.
Yeah. And it's because Zach carries the spirit of Emperor Chen, and everyone hates that bitch. So he goes to trial, and he has to kind of role play Emperor Chen to kind of garner sympathy. But he spills the beans that his mom's spirit is captured. Oh no! Now they've somehow figured out that, wait a minute, the Emperor isn't in the boy, he's in the headsets. You know what we're gonna do? We're gonna throw the headset into the fucking afterlife. And Zach dives in after it. Mm-hmm. He just goes in after it. He just goes in. Mm-hmm. And that further strengthens his magic, and he comes out, and he's like, cool, I'm ready to go face the fucking Dragon Emperor, and I'm also fed up with everyone's bullshit. I'm gonna be mean now. Mm-hmm. This is where we see Zach's character start to kaibify.
There we go. That's right.
Starting to calcify into kaiba. Yeah. So they go start heading off towards Emperor Chin's mausoleum with the, if y'all have heard, the terracotta army, all that shit's down there. Because that's where the plug is. And on their way there, stuff starts to smell a little fishy. And not fishy in the way that Emperor Chin's body smelled when they carried it rotting with a barrel of dead fish, as we also found out in this book. Simon and Melissa are starting to act a little sus. They're trying to tell Zachary the story about Nezha, another mythical Chinese figure, and they're getting a little, like, dicey about it. Like, well, and Zachary's just sitting here proud that he's retaining all this Chinese culture, considering he's felt so very alienated from it this whole time. And he's like, no, Nezha, I can remember that name. It's all good. And through some Googling at their next rest stop, Simon does realize that the Yellow Emperor doesn't have the kind of magic it requires to capture souls. But someone else does. And it's through the same kind of pagoda he saw take his mom's spirit. And it's a servant of the Emperor possessing Simon.
Right.
Honestly, this was a twist. I did not expect that. I was like, what?
I mean, I could kind of tell something, like, I think it's telegraphed very clearly that something's weird going on with the Simon and Melissa. But it worked for you?
Though. It worked for me because I didn't think it was that.
I didn't think it was that exactly, but I was like, okay, something weird and shocking is going to happen here. And, like, that's something that, like, I read stories for is cues for reveals now, because I I try to write stories. And so like that's something that like, I was like, okay, yeah, that makes sense to me. But like, I'm glad that works as a twist because like that, I was listening to an interview that Xiao did with somebody, and like they were also like, yeah, this is such a big twist, and I loved it, and I was like, I don't know if it worked for me, but like it seems like it is like pretty good, and like I think it also, even if you do see it coming, it still works because it heightens the stakes. It's like, okay, now your friends actually have been the ones who have been puppeting you this whole time, and that's actually pretty good as far as a character motivation, because now it's not like, oh, it's this nebulous emperor, it's like, oh, it's the people you thought you were friends. So like, even if it is like a little obvious to somebody who's looking for it, like I still think it fundamentally works.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, yeah, it's obvious that there's going to be a twist, but like I thought it worked for me in the sense of like I did do a little like surprise Pikachu. I was like, oh no, they captured your mom. That's nuts. And then Zachary starts rightfully flipping his lid.
Right.
So at this point, I feel like I skipped over a pretty big part, which is they've been to the Dragon Emperor at this point. And they got the magic seal. That was a very big action set piece, but the result of which they got a magic seal that makes Zachary very powerful. And the only reason he's the one carrying it is because he's not fully bonded to Emperor Qin, so he's not going to lose his fucking gourd like the other two do. Apparently, Simon has tried to kill Zach a couple of times while he was resting up from that battle, because he's being called to conquer by the seal, which I thought was very cool. But, yeah, so Zach starts figuring out that, like, actually, he can call down a big-ass rainstorm and be like, hey, until you wake up my mom, I'm not doing anything else, you fucking liars. And Simon and Melissa are like, dude, we don't have time, we have 4 days. He's like, that's plenty of time, get out. And he tries to compel them to go do it, but they're like, hey, Zach, the rainstorm you called down has grounded all the flights. What do you want us to do? And he's still mad about it. So he's like, fine, I'm going to try and chill out the rainstorm. But you guys are still going, and I'm not going anywhere with you until you do that. So Zach does what any teenage boy would do. He stumbles into the wrong neighborhood and possesses a bike gang to serve him.
Oh, yeah, I forgot. Okay. Y'all gotta understand that, like, we are still like 3/4 of the way through the book at this point. So much shit is happening in this novel. Like you gotta forgive me for not remembering the plot points. Did we even talk about how the Dragon Emperor, they're technically working for the Dragon Emperor at one point to attack the Celestials?
No, I totally forgot about that because so much is happening during this book.
Right, like there's a whole bit where the Dragon Emperor makes them go fight the Celestials, and like I completely forgot about that until I watched that interview this morning, and I was just like, there's just a lot happening.
Yeah, so he possesses this bike gang to get him takeout and protect him, which I thought was very fun. And apparently the bike gang leader had like these hot girls sitting there getting paid just to validate him. And
which is great.
Poor little gay Zach is just like, they were here already when I got here.
He's like, hey, please, this isn't, I didn't, hey. I like how the second in command is just like, oh, well, he's like, hey, you should probably eat something. He's like, wait, you're gonna let me eat? And he's like, yeah, dude, why? And he's like, oh, our old boss didn't let us eat in front of him. And it's just like, Zach, I love Zach.
He's just
like, there's a whole bit where like there's a rude man who comes in, and Zach is like, he keeps coming in, and Zach like has this power to command people. He can give them an order and they have to follow it. But like he's like, okay, I command this man to go to the end of the line. He does, and he's like, wait, I was in the front of you. What happened? He like goes and starts a fight, and he's like, okay, I command you to leave. The man leaves, comes back, and he's just like, hey, wait, what the fuck is going on? Hey, I was in line. And then people are like, hey, dude, what is happening with you? And Zach is like, also, get out of here, never come back. And then also he makes all the bike gang members quit smoking, which is really good. He's like, hey, stop smoking forever. And they're like, oh, okay.
And also don't litter.
And don't litter, it's bad. It's like, oh, okay. So like when Jason Shun shows up, the second in command's like, Zach like Sama, or not Sama. He uses a different honorific, but like he's like, Mr. Zach, what are you? Who are you? And he's just like, I'm just a fucking kid, man. Get out of here.
Yeah, well, so yeah, Jason Shun shows up when this is all happening, and Jason Shun is the Pegasus of this operation, where he is the wealthy tech billionaire who made the cool AR headset that Zach uses, and Mythrealm and all that shit. And he is supposedly possessed by the spirit of the Yellow Emperor, and everyone's like, the Yellow Emperor is evil and will talk to you in your dreams. And Jason Shun is like, hey man, so now you've realized that Emperor Chen sucks and is bad. So why don't you come help me let his son possess you, his cool son that you've been seeing in your dreams, who was like totally wronged. And then me and you will actually open the spirit plug together, because like it's actually bad that the spirits are all trapped. And it would actually be like better if they weren't trapped. And like your friends lied to you, and I would never lie to you, you know, like I'm cool. So my poor gay Zachary at that point just goes, you know what, yeah, fuck it, let's go. And so he does let Fusu possess him, and it doesn't go well.
No.
Immediately the prince takes over his body and like forcibly moves it to the mausoleum of Emperor Chen. Right. Where his friends do catch up to him. And they do have one last kind of standoff of all these like superpowers. And Zachary does get control of his body back, but not before Emperor Chen basically says, hey, Zach, like, I need you to know I'm serious. What if I kill myself in front of you, like my spirit, and scatter myself to the winds to prove that I'm serious and not doing this for selfish reasons? And he stabs himself with a spirit sword and then disappears. And then Zach goes, oh, shit, he's not fucking around. And then he breaks the possession of his son. And, they kind of reinforce the spirit plug. And then it's set up for a sequel.
Right. And like, yeah, like the plot of this I found very difficult to follow because it was so fast. Like all of that stuff happens so quickly. Like it is very, it's a little, not very, but it's a little strange to have, your ostensible big bad kind of show up here at like almost the middle of Act 3, and be like, hey, this is like here's the final moment where like you come and hang out with me. I think probably the thing that didn't work for me most is that like the denouement moment, or not the denouement, the climactic moment comes so rapidly. Like you'd think you would come closer to the confrontation with the Dragon Emperor, but instead, like the way that Xiao was talking about it was like, they got stuck on the Dragon Emperor a bit, and so they had to figure out like how to, resolve that like fundamental tension.
Right.
And I think I have a lot of sympathy for Xiao, and we'll talk about this a little bit, but like, I think this book is, not really hitting for me because I do like the kind of like when I'm comparing this book to like things like Iron Widow or, famously my two favorite authors are Rebecca Kuang and Fonda Lee, and like, those people have like, have like tomes of history and set place as like setting, and like are able to like build up all these backstories, before doing it all, like laying the groundwork with a lot of like story and political history, so that way like they can just kind of like make all of that work and click together in a way, and like there's just no time for that in a middle grade novel. I think this is probably the limit of how long a middle grade novel can be. Like I mean, this still must have been close to 100, maybe 80k words, I'm not sure, but like it still seemed pretty long for a middle grade book. And like I think that's truly Xiao struggling with like the fact that like, we'll talk. I mean, like I think we'll link this in the show notes, but like Xiao was very clear about like this was a book written because they weren't getting paid enough for Iron Widow, and like that's ultimately why Zachary Ying got written, is because Iron Widow started to take off, and presumably what happened is that once Iron Widow started getting buzz, they're like, hey, I somebody probably contacted them, was like, hey, do you have any interest in like writing a middle grade book, or like maybe I would be surprised if they had like a middle grade book on deck, but like maybe they had like this idea for it. And what happened was like once Iron Widow popped off, I bet somebody got in touch with their agent and was like, hey, write this book for us.
They actually in the afterword for Zachary Ying, they do kind of mention where this came from, which is to say like this was a pandemic book.
Okay.
Yeah, this was a hey, I'm stuck at home with my parent, or it might have been slightly before. It was very their parents, like it was a time where their parents weren't super invested in their writing career, or like wanted an actual 5-year plan from them, and they were just like, stuck at home during the pandemic and couldn't, and even before that, just because they weren't making enough money, and like really just like pounded out this middle grade book because one of their friends had convinced them to try middle grade or to write for middle grade. So.
Okay, I mean that does that. I remember them saying that, and they're pretty open about the fact that like, yeah, they have a biochem degree, right? Like this is something like it makes sense that like their parents would be like, I mean this is a pretty common thing among Asian parents, which is like you really should do something in the sciences and STEM, discouraging creative fields, and like I'm sure that like once Iron Widow starts popping off, Xiao's doing fine, but like. I suspect, I'm glad you cleared that up, but like it does definitely seem like this is a book that was written, under a lot of constraints, and you can kind of tell, because I feel like if this book had a little more time to breathe, it would have been a little bit tighter. But like, for a book written, during the pandemic, written also on top of Iron Widow's debut, because if this was written during 2020, Iron Widow would probably have been already sold by this point, and they were probably having to do edits with that. Very difficult thing to do. So like, yeah, I think that, it's a tough book to nail down, I think. And ultimately, I think Xiao should be happy with this book, right? But it's just we're coming from. I don't read a lot of middle grade books, I think, is what ultimately it comes down on, and that's why I'm a little bit like thrown by the pacing. This was a long digression. Basically, it boils down to like the pacing was a little faster, man.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just Googling when this book came out. It was 2022. So
right.
Yes.
Right. So.
Yeah, I mean, like I think I can't remember if we brought this up on the call or not, but I do feel like this is maybe the last middle grade book we'll cover for Mortified.
Right.
It does what it needs to do for 12-year-olds, but we are not 12-year-olds, so it's just like I had fun reading it. I think I would have had more fun watching it, right? In like the background. Right. Lord knows Mama loves like a children's TV show as background noise. Because I have fun paying attention to like I love Miraculous Ladybug, right? Like I love paying attention to how are they reusing their assets? How are they doing this on a budget? How are they like maybe conveying these like nuanced story points to children, which I don't know if Miraculous Ladybug's all that nuanced, but like Owl House is, for example, right?
Right.
So, but reading it just like, it moved at such a clip and you're so inside Zachary's head that I'm like, I can't relate to this. I just want to like pick him up by the scruff of his neck and feed him soup, Right. It's just that. But otherwise, like, I would love to feed this to a 12-year-old and be like, what do you think?
Right. Like, I think a big comparison point of this is like Percy Jackson, right? I don't know if you've ever read any of those novels, but like I read some of those when I was in grade school, and I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. And like, I think that if I had something like this in grade school, I also would have eaten it up, right? I think this is kind of, especially because when I was in grade school, Yu-Gi-Oh was like just starting to get popular. So like this one, if I had this when I was like in the third grade, I would have shat my pants. Like this would have been great. But like, yeah, and that's ultimately where we have to come down, which is like, middle grade books aren't for us, and that's okay. But like, I still think you get a lot of like the ambiguity, like Xiao talking about how like all the three emperors that possess their kids like aren't good people, and like there's a big speech that Jin Shi Huang gives to Zach, which is like, hey bud, yeah, we were emperors, we were genocidal maniacs, like, and or not genocidal, they were murderous maniacs, but like, like
that's the price of conquest, though, right?
Right. Yeah. Like that's what happens when you become the leader of a state. And brings up the fact that like this is this is not like you. The only reason you don't know this about your American presidents is because they don't teach you yet, because you're in the 6th grade and they'll probably never teach you about all the terrible things you did. They did, but like brings up the fact that like he's like played I think there's a part where he's like, yeah, me and Alexander the Great and George Washington all watched American Idol with Napoleon. It was great, I guess. But like, it's an interesting you see how Shao is bringing in their influences of like trying, like I think that's a big thing with them, is like showing how people who are in power are like have to be ruthless, and like, you know, there's a lot of like gray area.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And, you know, they do bring up like the fact that a lot of U.S. presidents were slave owners, and you know, those kind of like commonly buried pieces of American history. I did find myself, and I won't go on like too much of a tangent about this, but I did find myself kind of uncomfortable at points reading. I think once the magic system was a little bit more explained, in the sense of like, these are kind of like, again, spiritual soup of these people. Like, they're kind of the memory of them, they're kind of them, and they're kind of also legend and kind of also not. But then I got better, but I was like, I don't know how I feel about like personifying somebody who was alive, you know, and like kind of giving them a new, like more modern life in a new context. And then the other thing I kind of kept thinking about was, wow, as I've gotten older, I've become so disinterested in like historical leaders. I truly don't care anymore about hearing about leaders. It drives me nuts. Like, tell me about what the farmers did in some province. Tell me how they played games. Tell me, you know, like that one copper salesman that everyone keeps talking about from
Nasser, yeah.
Yeah. I want to know about that motherfucker.
Sumeria or Babylonia.
Yeah. I think Sumeria.
Yeah,
the copper criminal. I want to hear, you know, I've become very disinterested in like, I guess putting people up on a pedestal, and maybe that is just an artifact of the time that we live in, but who's to say? Yeah. Any other thoughts about this book before we move into our marketing minute?
I did think, you know, I want to kind of talk about who we think this book's audience. I mean, I think ultimately we know that this book's audience is like is younger, like kids, but like I did think some of the references were a little dated, like for people who are, you know, between the ages of like 9 and 12. Like there's a Leroy Jenkins bit, which like Shao does acknowledge that Leroy Jenkins is a very old meme, and like it's an old meme now. So I don't know how, you know, I feel like it would be a very old meme for, you know, people in the future. And like, there's a lot of things where they reference like the Justice League or Darth Vader. And it's like, oh, I don't like American Idol. Like, I've never watched an episode of American Idol. Like, I don't know what kids in the future are going to be watching American Idol.
So I think, I didn't mind the Darth Vader because that's pretty current, right? Star Wars is still very much in the cultural.
That's because Star Wars itself cannot let go of Darth Vader in a real way, and I won't. That's a whole other podcast. We did 3 of them, in fact. You can go listen to them. Justice
League, still very much, you know, relevant. DC is still relevant,
I guess.
Leroy Jenkins I thought was funny because because we, you know, this whole book is from Zach's perspective. Even Zach was like, had to think about it for a minute. Zach is like, Leroy Jenkins, and then it's just Emperor Chin's memes being outdated, so I thought that was kind of fun, right? I thought that's
like a good bit that like he's trying to be hip, and it's like, man, you are 20 years late.
Yeah, you're behind, my dude.
That's a good way to read it.
But you know, American Idol also like is still on, so I feel like, I
suppose that's true.
I don't know about your household, but my immigrant household loves American Idol. So my mom
that might be. Yeah.
My mom literally texted me last week or 2 weeks ago. There's some lady from Georgia on right now, like the country, not the state. And she's like, can you please text 9-10 times to this 6-digit phone number so that the girl from Georgia will get your votes? I was like, sure, Mom.
Sure. Okay. So that is a personal blind spot. I guess American Idol's still doing well.
They still got money. I still see clips of it. Katy Perry's fucking on it now.
Yeah, I did hear about that recently.
She's a judge, so...
You know, shout-outs to Miss Perry, I guess.
I suppose. Yeah, so I think the references are fine. You know what I mean? It's
yeah.
I would like... You know what? I will make an exception to my no more middle grade books rule. If some author out there wants to get a fucking 12-year-old meme consultant on their book, yeah, bring it. I want to know what the 12-year-old meme consultant has to say.
Yeah, yeah. I think that like I would be consider reading the sequel to this if Xiao was like, hey, actually, I had a lot more time to work on this one. I wasn't writing this during COVID, so I wasn't super depressed. Like,
Yeah.
I think I might, depending on where I am, in 2024, whenever this book, Heavenly Tyrant comes out in 2024. That's probably what we'll read. But like, whenever the sequel to Zachary Ying comes out, I might dip my toes in. But ultimately, I think probably what I wanted to stress though, that like there is a lot of like educational, like this book is very educational, and it's specifically for, Xiao said this explicitly, this is for kids who are Chinese American, or not even Chinese American, right, but Chinese immigrants to quote unquote Western countries, like for people of the Chinese diaspora, and like I think that is truly who this audience is, and like trying to teach them about there's history. There's lots of bits in this book where it's just like, hey, here's a bit from Wikipedia. Like here's kind of a summary of what, this interesting part of Chinese history is. And like, I do appreciate that. And like, the culture that I come from is more, my mom comes from, which is Singapore, is like much more heavily influenced by Chinese culture than it is like by Indian culture. So like I do kind of wish that I had this, like this is a book that I would have been interested in if I was, if I was younger. And it's just I've outgrown it. I think that's ultimately where it comes down on. But like I still love the fact that this is a book specifically for Chinese diaspora kids.
Yeah, God, if I had a book about I don't know, someone stuffing a bunch of rice and meat into a pumpkin in the States, I'd be all over that shit. That is a fun thing people in the Middle East do. We, got a lot of rice dishes, and sometimes we put it in pumpkin. Which is forefronted in my mind right now because I watched Good Mythical Morning, where they were doing, I think, rice dishes, and they ate rice out of a melon, which was turkey, and I was like, wow. I never expect to see like remnants of like my culture or neighboring cultures on the internet, but yet here we are. Great. Well, I think you have a marketing minute for us.
Leyla. Mm-hmm. All right. We've been given the opportunity to make a middle grade educational book. That's something in the vein of Zachary Ying, where it's like, hey, we're trying to make a book about, for diaspora kids. What is the framing device that we are using to pitch this? Like this one is, Yu-Gi-Oh! Chinese history by way of Yu-Gi-Oh! Right? Mm-hmm. So what is your pitch for this diaspora book that you're trying to read? Mm-hmm. Or maybe not even a diaspora book, because my pitch is not. And I can do mine first if you want a second to think.
Yeah, please do.
So my pitch for this is, we love Kingdom Hearts here.
We do.
Mine would be like Kingdom Hearts meets all of the terrible things that America did that your social studies class didn't teach you. Like I think the first episode is like is just like, hey, George Washington, why are you a slave owner? Start there and then work up to Bush did 9/11. I think that's the last. I think the last battle is George Bush.
That's the episode. That's the episode title of the last episode is Bush did 9/11.
Yeah, you have to you have to go to the White House and fight George W. Bush.
Oh boy.
And then, of course, the cutscene at the end is Dick Cheney is the actual puppet master bot.
Yeah, of course.
No, actually, the Kingdom Hearts, like, the thing where you have to fight Roxas and the Lingering Will and whoever, the ultimate boss fight is actually just fucking Henry Kissinger is the final mixed boss battle at the end of the game.
That bitch.
That motherfucker recently turned 100, and I hope that he
He's got to croak soon.
He must have some sort of literal soul engine powering that heart, because what a fucking bastard.
Well, when he finally goes, I'll send you a bottle of champagne. We'll pop.
God, seriously.
Jesus Christmas. Anyway, I think if we're going to do a middle grade educational book, so I think we do historical Hunger Games.
This is a conversation I had with Josh today.
Me and Josh Green are always on the same fucking wavelength.
Okay, please explain yours.
We take historical figures who are presumably in hell, make them gladiator fight.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And
Yes.
parts of the challenges are going to have to be them facing the consequences of the terrible things that they did.
This is a great book. This owns. I'm going to ask my agent if I can write that.
You are welcome to the idea.
Thank you. The conversation I had with Josh was specifically about American presidents. If once America falls, the necromancers that take over America should have to resurrect all of our presidents and make them do a Hunger Games. was the pitch I have. So yes,
I do think Jimmy Carter should get to like host it.
Yeah, that's, you know what? I'll allow it.
Yeah,
I think
that fucking peanut farmer. Yeah.
He's all right. I think there's some. I'm sure he's technically a war criminal, but like, listen.
Every American president is technically a war criminal.
Right. Exactly. I think of all the war criminal presidents we have, he's the best one.
Him and the guy who was only in the office for like 2 weeks or some shit.
Actually, okay. Sidebar about fucking William Henry Harrison. He used to be the governor of Indiana. And he was actually a big racist, and he killed a bunch of Native people, and that's why. Yeah, no, actually, fuck William Henry Harrison. He's in. I have him. You know, this is for the super fans of Mortified. This is a little exclusive. If you bought Finley at Midwest Fantasy, the Bird King. The evil bird king in Finley that implied that he fucked a bird, and that created the Hydra Herons. That's based off William Henry Harrison. The portrait of the Bird King is his portrait. So that's a little bit of Indiana history for you all, folks, here at the end of Mortified.
Wow. What are you going to do when Indiana's no longer part of your brand at the end of this year?
I am sad about leaving Indiana. I straight up am, but God.
All right.
I want to see Prophetstown before I go. I should go up there.
This episode has gone so off the fucking rails.
We gotta rate it in.
Yeah, we gotta wrap it up, bitch. All right. Take us out.
Leyla, where can we be found on the internet when we're not dragging William Henry Harrison?
You can find me at LEYLSES on Twitter and Tumblr.
If you want to know what I'm doing, I'm at Aaron Essexall on Twitter, and my website is aavoid.com, where I talk about tabletop RPGs, health policy, and writing. I do another podcast with my friends Michael and Josh. That's at The Bible Boys, where we talk about Christian media and either praise or condemn it. We're working our way through the History Channel, the Bible series. Our last episode was about Samson. It's mostly about a huge dude owning dudes and then falling in love with their women, with the Philistine women. It's great. It's awesome. I loved it. It was a great time. Yeah, if that sounds interesting to you, check that out. Our theme song is Obsolete by Keshko from the album Filmmakers Reference Kit Volume 2. You can find more of their music at keshko.bandcamp.com. Leyla, how do we want to close this episode out?
Well, Aaron, I would like to close it out by saying that the History Museum in Philadelphia has 2 of Tang Taizong's prized warhorse statues, and in the great words of Jiren Zhezhao, give them back, America.
Amen. We'll see you all next week.